The White House huddles. President Trump says a bill to overhaul Obamacare will get even better as he meets with Senate Republicans to discuss health care. Saving little Charlie Gard. Congress passes an amendment aimed at helping the British baby get treatment. Vatican diplomacy. A former ambassador to the Holy See weighs in on Callista Gingrich's bid for the job. And Facebook speaks out. The social media giant responds after dozens of Catholic-related pages are shut down. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, July 19th, 2017.
We cannot keep the commitment we made to the American people to repeal and replace Obamacare unless we get on the bill.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell speaks for Senate Republicans as they move forward on their plan despite the apparent lack of support. Good evening from Washington, D.C. Thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President Trump promises an even better health care bill while hosting GOP senators for lunch at the White House. President Trump asserts the group is closer to agreement than people understand, and they will have to pull it through. Correspondent Mark Irons is at the White House. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. President Trump told senators they must not leave town for their August recess without sending him a repeal to sign. And he says they have to keep the promise they've made for 7 years.
We're in this room today to deliver on our promise to the American people to repeal Obamacare and to ensure that they have the health care that they need. We have no choice. We have to repeal and replace Obamacare. We can repeal it, but the best is repeal and replace, and let's get going.
The president says the GOP is doing a poor job of advertising their bill. Trump laid out a list of the bill's features that he says no one knows about. They include repealing the individual mandate, which requires individuals to purchase coverage, repealing the employer mandate, and expanding coverage options and protections.
We'll protect pre-existing condition coverage. You listen to the Democrats, they say, oh, they're giving up. You're going to have better pre-existing than they had in their plan, and you're going to be protected. We'll allow the use of pre-tax dollars to pay premiums. We'll expand the HSAs. We'll devote substantial resources to fight opioid and other substance abuse.
The GOP plan will give states $45 billion to fight the opioid crisis that has gripped the Northeast and the Midwest. President Trump says the states can do a better job than the federal government when it comes to health care. The president ended by saying the Senate shouldn't leave town until this bill is complete and on his desk. He says he'll sign it, and they'll all celebrate for the American people. Lauren.
I understand the president's director of legislative affairs fielded questions today at the off-camera White House briefing, and you pressed him to explain the president's defense of pro-life protections in this health care bill. What happened?
Yeah, Mark Short took questions on details of the bill, outlining the Hyde Amendment provisions that prevent taxpayer funds from paying for abortions. I asked him how important these pro-life aspects of the bill are for President Trump.
The president, from the very first day of the administration, has pursued pro-life policies. He promised that on the campaign. You look at Mexico City and the reversal he did there from the very start. He expanded even to include international, beyond that, international funding of abortions. I think that this was the first vice president to speak at the March for Life rally.
And we will continue to follow the White House's pro-life positions. Lauren.
Mark Irons, correspondent at the White House. Thank you, Mark. And the pressure is on for GOP senators to take action. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi joins us with their reaction to today's White House meeting. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. Despite the headlines declaring the death of the Obamacare repeal, the majority leader is still planning a vote on this early next week. He says that's the wish of the president and the vice president. But the senators I spoke with coming back to the Capitol from the White House lunch weren't sure exactly what they'd be voting on.
I think we all agree it's better to both repeal and replace. But we could have a vote on either.
Republican senators returned to Capitol Hill
after lunch at the White House. Already 3 Republicans oppose a straight repeal. Senator Susan Collins of Maine is one of them.
I don't think it is very reassuring to people who receive insurance through the ACA, nor to the insurance markets, which are already rattled, for us to repeal the law, which is now at this point deeply interwoven into our healthcare system, and say, gee, we hope that in 2 years we will come up with a replacement.
Senator Lamar Alexander of Tennessee, who chairs the Senate's Committee on Health, tells me it's complicated. What does it say, Senator, that there's been 7 years to work on a plan and now there's been three attempts and they've all failed here in the Senate?
I would say it's a difficult problem to solve.
But Republicans don't seem ready to throw in the towel. Are you worried if you can't get this done, what this means for folks back home that you've promised 7 years of repealing?
I think the goal here is not only to repeal, but to repeal it appropriately, which in my view means fully. And secondly, to replace it with something that actually works in improving the access to health care, affordability of health care for all Americans.
Democrats tell me they've heard that story before.
This is kind of like a perpetual motion machine where Republicans just can't quit trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Senators say the majority leader had planned a showdown vote today, but fellow Republicans urged him to wait until next week. Now, this vote is not even on final passage of the health care reform. It's just to open up debate on the Senate floor. Lauren?
Earlier, I understand there was a lot of screaming behind you. What was going on?
Right down that corridor behind me is Leader McConnell's office, and there's protesters that were inside and outside of his office. They were escorted out or actually arrested by the police. This is being repeated at every single Republican senator's office, at least the Republicans who support repealing Obamacare. It's a bunch of liberal groups from around the country gathering here in D.C. today.
Quite a busy day at the Capitol. Correspondent Jason Calvi, thank you so much. House Democrats introduced a resolution of no confidence against President Trump. 24 compiled a 17-page list detailing what they call the president's unacceptable behavior. On the list, his decision to fire FBI Director James Comey and his claim President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower during the election. Democrats admit the resolution likely will not impact the president. And the White House denies President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin held an undisclosed meeting while attending the G20 summit earlier this month, instead saying the two leaders had a second conversation while at dinner attended by world leaders. This is sparking reaction in Russia. National security correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee joins us with more. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. A senior Russian lawmaker is lashing out at the mainstream media tonight, calling reports of a secret meeting this month between Presidents Trump and Putin sensationalist. President Trump responding to reports of private talks with Vladimir Putin, saying on Twitter, "Fake news story of secret dinner with Putin is sick. All G20 leaders and spouses were invited by the Chancellor of Germany. Press knew." A senior White House official says the discussion on the sidelines of a July 7th dinner lasted nearly an hour and no other U.S. officials were present. Ignoring protocol, the president relied on a Russian translator, leaving the U.S. with no official record of their conversation. Democrats are hammering the president.
This kind of private meeting is virtually unprecedented in the diplomatic world. Maybe the president was embarrassed or in some way reluctant to disclose the fact that this meeting occurred with him alone, with a Russian interpreter and Vladimir Putin.
National security officials reject that notion, saying a conversation over dessert shouldn't be characterized as a meeting. Officials with Chancellor Angela Merkel, who hosted the dinner, say the German leader wasn't surprised or confused by anything that happened that evening. The Trump campaign's connections with Russia are under scrutiny. Today, the Russian lawyer who met with Donald Trump Jr. in 2016 says she's willing to testify before the U.S. Senate. She says she has no ties to the Russian government. Trump Jr. allegedly agreed to the meeting and was promised damaging information about Hillary Clinton. In addition to Trump Jr., Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and then campaign chairman Paul Manafort also met with the Russian lawyer at Trump Tower in June of last year. The Senate Intelligence Committee is investigating, say they want to hear from all of those involved in the meeting. Lauren?
National security correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting. Thank you. A U.S. congressional committee votes in favor of giving Charlie Gard, the terminally ill baby, and his parents permanent residency so the child can undergo an experimental treatment. Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler introduced the amendment. It was passed unanimously in the House Committee on Appropriations yesterday. The vote is needed in the House and the Senate for it to become law. The amendment is part of a bill that includes money for President Trump's border wall. Joining us now is Catherine Glenn Foster, the president and CEO of Americans United for Life, who's traveled to London to defend the rights of Charlie Gard's parents to make decisions. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Tell me about your time with the parents and how are they?
They are doing as well as any parents in this situation might. They are, of course, frustrated and heartbroken at this fight they're having to go through. In addition to the medical fight they're already battling alongside Charlie, but then on top of that, to be in the courts fighting the very hospital that was created to care for the most vulnerable in our society and hired to care for Charlie.
We have a picture of you actually holding Charlie Gard. Look at that. That is just beautiful. How is he doing?
He is as precious as any 11-month-old baby you can think of. He's pudgy, he's sweet, he has that new baby smell still, and you can just squeeze his thighs and run your fingers through his hair, and he's precious.
You say that there is a tremendous amount of hope here. Why is that?
There is absolutely hope. For one thing, Mr. Justice Francis in court asked for new evidence, and that doctor from New York gave it. He gave evidence, he gave statistics, he estimated the probability of success, and it was so much higher based on this further study that he's done in the last few months. It was so much higher than he had estimated before. There was gasp going through the courtroom when he gave this evidence.
And yet we are still in a holding pattern. Unfortunately. You're headed back to London next week. How can Americans United for Life, which is an American organization, help Charlie?
There are so many ways that we at AUL and Americans generally can help, coming alongside Charlie's parents, Connie and Chris, working with the legal team. We've been doing that quite a bit, working with American doctors and other influential players in the US, in the UK, and around the world. We're doing all of these things, and we also have a petition that we're hosting. It is hosted by Citizen Go and sponsored by Americans United for Life in coordination with Citizen Go. Already more than 500,000 signatures on this petition, and we're hoping to hit 1 million by the time of our 3 p.m. rally on Sunday afternoon.
And where's that rally?
The rally is just down the street from the hospital at the Queen's Square.
Okay, and Citizen Go, we can go to their website, I would imagine?
Citizengo.org, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us, Catherine Glenn Foster. Safe travels back to London.
Thank you.
EWTN's Pro-Life Weekly and Catherine Zeltner, the anchor, is going more in depth with Catherine Glenn Foster and the Charlie Gard case. You can watch the show Friday night at 11 p.m. Eastern right here on EWTN. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro rejects President Trump's call to halt a rewriting of its constitution.
Un mal líder que sueña con convertirse en dictador.
Maduro's move is widely seen as a move to consolidate the government's power. During a daily televised program, the leader said Venezuela will not be governed by the Northern Empire. Violent clashes take place outside the Old City in Jerusalem. It's part of a dispute between Israel and the Muslim world over a Jerusalem shrine. Palestinians claim Israel is trying to expand control over the Muslim-run site, which is also revered by Jews. Tensions remain high inside the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. Associated Press cameras traveled inside the DMZ for the first time since North Korea launched its first ever intercontinental ballistic missile. The South Korean Defense Ministry on Monday proposed holding inter-Korean military talks this week, but Pyongyang has not given a response to Seoul's offers. Gunmen abduct 2 Catholic priests in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The kidnapping happened in North Kivu province. The Bishops' Conference of Congo has called on security forces to do everything that they could do to free these 2 priests. The Congolese bishops say 3 other priests abducted in the same area in 2012 still have not been released. An independent report confirms mistreatment of more than 450 students at one of Germany's most famous Catholic choir schools, and it says 67 were sexually abused. The reported abuse took place between 1945 and 1992. The choir was run for 30 years by Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI's elder brother, Monsignor George Ratzinger, who has said he was not aware of these allegations. Father Hans Zollner, a member of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors, joins us from Rome. Welcome to the program. How is it possible that abuse on this scale could have gone unchecked and is just now coming to light?
It comes to light because the bishop has taken a very courageous decision to open up the archives, to let an independent lawyer look into that, and he could produce that report, contacting survivors of abuse and asking all kinds of questions, and he has come up with this, which brought to light a horrible and horrendous story that has been going on for 70 years. Actually, most of this abuse has happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but the point is that in those years and decades, people who could have known did not look at it. People who could have spoken to police didn't do it. And this includes, of course, the church leadership, but this includes also the parents and relatives of the children. I myself come from that city, and I know a few guys who have been on that school. I knew about that. When we were kids, they were talking about having been beaten up. But obviously at that time, the sensitivity about child rights and the violation of these rights was not as high as it is now, and punishment, corporal punishment, was considered more or less a normal way of education.
You advise the Holy Father on this issue. Tell us what the Church is doing to protect children from predators.
Now, the first thing is that we learn from those experiences, and that bishops and leaders of the Church as a whole follow that example, because this gives us the possibility to do at least a little bit of justice to all those who have been harmed in such a terrible way. And learning from that means that we, for example, in our institutions, do a thorough screening of all employees, all those who work in our educational, pastoral, social institutions, that we look into their past and present, that we see how they have had interactions with youth, that we give very clear guidelines and norms for all our institutions, that we do thorough training in initial and ongoing formation of all those who work with and for the Church.
Thank you so much for joining us to talk about this very important issue. Father Hans Zollner, a member of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, voter integrity. The Presidential Commission looking into voter fraud meets for the first time. And hunting for pythons?
It's imperative that we eradicate them, so maybe I can go in there.
We'll tell you why Florida Representative Francis Rooney is wading in. The Supreme Court is allowing strict enforcement of the Trump administration's refugee ban until a federal appeals court weighs in. But the justices are leaving in place a lower court order that makes it easier for travelers from 6 mostly Muslim countries to enter the United States. Vice President Mike Pence chairs the first meeting of the Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity.
President Trump knows that the principle of one person, one vote is foundational to the American system of democracy. This commission has been charged to study the registration and voting processes used in federal elections.
The commission's purpose is to evaluate voter fraud and has requested each state turn over personal voter information, including names, histories, and party affiliation. President Trump told the group today that states refusing to comply have something to hide. The ambassador to the Holy See works on international issues of mutual interest, including human rights, peace, poverty, environmental protection, and interreligious understanding, just to name a few. My next guest has held the position and attended yesterday's nomination proceedings for Callista Gingrich. Florida Congressman Francis Rooney, a former ambassador to the Holy See during the George W. Bush administration, joins us now. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on, Lauren.
In Callista Gingrich's opening remarks to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, she says the United States and the Holy See can act as a worldwide force for good when we work together. In your opinion, what should be the top of her agenda if she's confirmed?
Well, I think the rise of political Islam and radical Islamic terrorism is still a penultimate issue for the relationship between the United States and the Holy See because of the unique role of religion and soft power diplomacy, which is a specialty of the Holy See. And I think that the way we deployed our relationship before with Pope Benedict is a continuing opportunity with Pope Francis.
She touted the president's position on the environment, saying we will remain an environmental leader, yet the United States has pulled out of the Paris Accord, and that is at odds with Pope Francis's views. And yesterday in the hearing, senators were not buying it.
I think as the president pursues a better deal for Americans, we will indeed remain an environmental leader in the world.
I appreciate your confidence in that. I must say I must have missed a few of the president's statements that have given you that faith.
Well, I thought she did a real good job of making clear that we can be an environmentally sensitive country and still not kill our economy in the process.
Are we seeing the beginning of diplomacy right there in the hearing room?
Well, she did a real good job of parrying back those senators' questions, both on the environment and on immigration.
What do you think that the likelihood of her being confirmed is?
Oh, I'm pretty sure she'll be confirmed. I mean, unless they want to make some political football out of Newt Gingrich's career as Speaker. But she'll be a great ambassador. She has the right temperament. She's studied up. She has the ear of the White House. Couldn't ask for a better pick.
She was a congressional aide when she began a 6-year affair with Newt Gingrich, then a married Republican congressman. And there are critics who are trying to bring this up and saying that she isn't morally fit for the position. Do you believe that members are going to use this against her?
I would hope not. I would hope they wouldn't cheapen such an important relationship and position with that kind of discussion. That's all past. I mean, the fact is she got Newt to convert to Catholicism.
I have to say that she was very much handled herself, and the Washington Post today did a piece on her hair. And it sort of goes to what the media considers important these days.
Yeah, instead of the good job she did answering those questions about environment and immigration and those Democrat senators trying to attack Trump through her, I thought she did a fantastic job of parrying that back.
I have to ask you before we go, you're python hunting?
Yeah, the Burmese python is an aggressive invasive species that's overrunning the Everglades, killing off all the rodents and animals that we have down there, and it's imperative that we eradicate them. So maybe I can go in there and take out a couple of them too.
All right, don't you have to hunt enough python here in Washington?
Well, yeah, these are the real devious pythons up here. These poor thing down there is just a natural animal.
They're nothing, right? You can handle them without a batting an eye. Thank you so much, Florida Congressman Francis Rooney, former ambassador to the Holy See.
Thank you.
Up next, Facebook responds to deleting and restoring dozens of Catholic-related pages. Facebook is blaming a technical glitch for knocking dozens of Catholic-focused pages with millions of followers offline for more than a day. In a statement to our partner Asi Prensa, a Facebook spokesman says the pages were reinstated. The incident was accidentally caused by a spam detection mechanism on the platform. We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience this may have caused. Earlier this week, Catholic-related pages with millions of followers were also removed from Facebook, and one of the pages, Father Rocky, had nearly 4 million likes. We talked to him.
Once this got out into the news stream that there were dozens of pages that had been taken down, I think Facebook reacted because I think it would be potentially embarrassing for them because they've had those challenges, sometimes thinking that they're discriminating or they don't really allow for free speech there.
You can read more on this story right now at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Finally tonight, 200 years after Jane Austen's death, One of England's most revered authors has her picture on the pound. A new £10 note unveiled in London is scheduled to go into circulation in September. It will be plastic, not paper, in an effort to make the money more secure. Austen's novels include Pride and Prejudice, Emma, and Sense and Sensibility, which in 1811 she published anonymously under the pen name A Lady. Well, that does it for this lady and all of us here at EWTN News Nightly. Thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night, and God bless you.